I uncovered 3 disturbing true au pair horror stories that will haunt your dreams forever. I never should have opened that door. Now, as I stand in the kitchen, the shadows lurk in the corners, twisting and stretching like fingers reaching for me. The warmth of my morning coffee is gone, replaced by a chill that seeps into my bones. I was just an ordinary au pair, rushing through breakfast, the clattering of dishes my only company. But then, my phone buzzed. A message. It contained only 3 words, "You won't believe." Curiosity clawed at me. What kind of stories could be haunting others like this? I opened the door to a world where darkness hid behind a seemingly innocent facade. There was the story of a girl who vanished. No trace. Just a whisper on the wind. People say her laughter still echoes in the house where she once lived, a maddening reminder of what was lost. I felt a shiver run down my spine. Then came the tale of the au pair who discovered a hidden room. She thought she was being let in on a secret that would bond her with her host family. Instead, she found remnants of a dark past, old toys, dust-coated dolls with lifeless eyes, and a diary filled with fragmented entries about paranoia and fear. I could hear the faintest creak of the floorboards beneath my feet, as if echoing her dread. I saw myself in her shoes, trapped in a maze of horror. The 3rd story was the worst. A warning. A cautionary tale wrapped in anxiety. A family who was not what they seemed. They showed kindness, but behind closed doors, cruelty resided. The au pair had fled, but not before witnessing a shadow move in the dark, feeling breath on her neck. The thought sent ice through my veins. I glanced around, half expecting to see someone watching me from the hallway. My pulse raced. The kitchen felt smaller. The shadows thickened. I could hear something, a soft whisper threading through the gloom. Was it just my imagination? Or was something, creeping closer? I stepped back, heart pounding against my ribcage. I leaned against the counter, trying to shake off the feeling. I couldn't breathe. The air hung heavy, stifling. The lights flickered, and I wondered if they would go out. I felt watched. The ground beneath me trembled like it was alive, mirroring my growing fear. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. A scream strangled in my throat. Darkness swallowed the room whole. I stared, paralyzed, as a figure stepped into the light, their face obscured. My heart raced, thoughts scrambled. I never should have opened that door. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure stood unnaturally still, too still, as if crafted from the very darkness that surrounded it. I squinted, trying to pierce the veil of shadow that cloaked its face, but the deeper I looked, the more elongated and grotesque it became. I felt my breath hitch in my throat. Was it human? The whispering in the air grew more pronounced, words half-formed and dripping with malice, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. Goosebumps erupted across my skin, my instincts screamed at me to flee, but my limbs felt heavy, paralyzed by the dread that surged like static in the air. I could feel something vital unraveling inside me, distilling my fear into an icy fire. "Do you hear them?" the figure asked, its voice raspy and echoing, reverberating off the walls, mixing with the whispers that crawled under my skin. "They are waiting." It stepped forward, and that movement, fluid yet jerky, shattered the spell that had kept me rooted in place. That I stumbled back, the rhythm of my heart intensifying as I collided with a chair, sending it clattering to the ground. The figure lunged, but I twisted away just in time, darting toward the door. My fingers fumbled with the handle, but it wouldn't budge. It felt as if something sinister had wrapped itself around the knob. I could almost hear the floorboards laugh beneath me, their creaks harmonizing with the sinister symphony of whispers growing louder, more insistent. "Let them in," the figure rasped again, and the shadows thickened, swirling as if alive. The darkness began to pulse, a heartbeat echoing through the wooden beams of the old house that had long since crumbled into despair and decay. Whatever lingered here had suffocated the light, feeding on the remnants of souls long forgotten. That I turned back, desperation clawing at my insides. The figure's features gradually sharpened, revealing hollow eyes that bore into my very essence, a black abyss filled with daunting secrets and relentless anguish. I felt sick. It was as if I could taste the despair, thick and acrid, choking me. "That I want." I cried, my voice trembling as I finally managed to pry the door open, only to find the entrance itself had warped into a swirling vortex of darkness. My throat was tight, the very air screamed at me to turn back, to heed the warnings of those whispered tales I'd unearthed. But I was trapped in a nightmare without an escape. "Together, we shall awaken them," it murmured, and as I glanced back once more, the figure melted into a mass of shadows, extending its tendrils toward me, beckoning, wanting to ensnare my thoughts. That I raced into the hallway, my pulse thunderous in my ears, the walls narrowing as the air grew colder. I swung my head around, desperately searching for a refuge, but the house shifted, displacing my sense of direction, confounding my understanding of reality. I needed to find a light, something to chase away the gathering fog of despair threatening to consume me. As I stumbled into the living room, a flickering light caught my eye. An old lamp in the corner buzzed feebly, illuminating what was once a cherished space filled with laughter and warmth. But the joy had long been replaced by despair. Faded photographs stared back at me from the walls, the once smiling faces now contorted in agony, as if they sought to warn me of the fate that awaited. But there was something else beneath the warm pool of light, something small and rusted lying on the ground. I crouched down, my fingers trembling as I reached for it. It was a key, cold and heavy in my palm. But a jolt of horror coursed through me when I noticed a familiar inscription etched onto its surface, the same delicate script from the diary of the au pair who had disappeared years ago. That I felt the weight of their despair, the suffocating knowledge of those trapped before me. Before I could stand, the whispers crescendoed, swirling around me until I could no longer discern their source. They felt alive, wrapping me in a cocoon of impending doom, urging me to unlock the horrors more profound than I could fathom. Then, a shattering crash echoed through the house, shaking the very ground beneath me. A door slammed open, and laughter, that same haunting laughter, spilled through the air, chilling me to the bone. It was not alone. Shadows poured from the entrance, their forms twisted and wretched, skirted by a dark mist. That I was no longer just trapped in a house, I was a part of its dark history, entwined with the anguished souls clamoring for release. My heart raced, the key heavy in my pocket like a ticking time bomb, and the shadows lunged toward me as I realized I wasn't the first au pair. But I might become the last. That I turned to run, only to find the whispers morphing into a deafening wail that echoed down the hall toward me, and in the grip of the gathering darkness, I saw desperate, hollow eyes staring back, faces drawn from every horror I had ever encountered as chilling fingers closed in, reaching for my soul. As the realization struck me cold, the door had opened wide before me, but it wasn't an escape. It was a trap. And before I could scream, the energy around me convulsed, pulling, pushing, engulfing me entirely. Then everything went black. When I awoke, the suffocating darkness was gone. Instead, I found myself sprawled on a cold, damp wooden floor, the air heavy with the stench of mold and decay. A feeble light flickered from an overhead bulb, casting an erratic glow that danced like a trapped insect. Confused and disoriented, I pushed myself up, taking in my surroundings. I realized I had been thrust into a cellar, the low ceiling lined with cobwebs that shivered in the desolate breeze that whispered through the cracks. Instinctively, I reached for the key, its jagged edges biting into my palm as I struggled to remember how I had come to be here. A sense of urgency clenched at my heart like a vice. I glanced around, searching for a way out. My breathing quickened, each exhale mingling with the faint sounds of something gnawing, distant scratching echoing against the stone walls. Above me, the faintest sound of footsteps rumbled, heavy and dragging, as if something large and ominous moved about the house, seeking something. I shivered, the remnants of the earlier encounter clawing at my mind. The echoes of the whispers haunted me still, lingering like a shadow I couldn't shake. With every step deeper into the cellar, the temperature dropped. An unholy cold seeped into my bones, and I pulled my jacket tighter around me. The shadows elongated in the flickering light, stretching like sinister hands yearning to grab hold. I stumbled across the remnants of broken furniture and shattered glass, the floor crunching ominously beneath my feet, each sound amplifying the dread pulsing in my chest. As I approached the far wall, an elaborate old door caught my eye. It loomed, warped and sprawling, almost regal in its decay, with deep grooves and mold creeping like ivy among the woodwork. An irresistible magnetism tugged at me, urging me to reach out. I brushed my fingers over the key in my pocket. Its cold metal felt like an anchor, grounding me to the reality that whatever lay on the other side had chosen to be forgotten. With a primal instinct guiding me, I moved towards the door, the gasping breaths of forgotten souls whispering through my ears, chanting my name, pulling me ever closer. The scratching sound grew louder, echoing throughout the cellar and piercing through the stagnant air. It was becoming more frantic, more desperate, like nails upon bone. That I inserted the key into the lock. A rush of adrenaline surged through me as I turned. The mechanism clicked, and with a swift push, the door creaked open, revealing a dark chamber filled with shadows that hung heavy as fog. As I stepped inside, a sensation of dread welled up within me. I stumbled into what appeared to be a neglected nursery. Toys, once bright and cheerful, lay abandoned, their colors dulled by the pass of time. Lullabies of old whispered through the silence, echoes existing in the air like remnants of broken dreams. A child's crib loomed in the corner, its slats yellowed and frail. There, atop a dusty table, lay a diary, its cover frayed and weather-beaten, resembling the skin of an animal long dead. Heart racing, I opened it, skimming over the frantically scrawled pages filled with incoherent ramblings about strange voices, shadows watching, and a desperate plea to escape. The last entry sent shivers down my spine. They come with the dark. Always take the one they desire most. Suddenly, a chilling laugh rippled through the air, echoing with a jarring familiarity that made my blood run cold. I whipped around, eyes wide, heart thrumming like a war drum. It was the laughter I'd heard earlier, but twisted like the spirits trapped here, mocking my foolishness. A form emerged from the shadows, a figure draped in dark rags, its face distorted and grotesque, an amalgam of all my worst fears. Hollow eyes locked onto mine, a twisted smile expanding across its visage, revealing nothing but jagged teeth. "You've come to play," it crooned, voice dripping with delight and malice, just like the others. I stepped back, every instinct screaming danger. The shadows pulsed around it, twisting into shapes that mirrored the contorted forms of the forgotten. They pressed in closer, igniting a terrifying realization. They were all around me, trapped souls drawn into this never-ending night, their agony surfacing in despair-laden wails. I turned to flee, heart hammering, but as I darted towards the open door, panic seized me. The door slammed shut with a force that shook the ground, locking me in with the horrors that now encircled me. The shadows twisted, forming a wall, trapping my escape, their hungry whispers filling the space, calling for release. Desperation clawed at my throat as I backed up against the cold, unforgiving wall. I scrambled to the window, but it was too high, the darkness beneath it crawling with unseen threats. My back pressed against the air thickening with malevolence, and then it happened. A child's voice, sweet yet sinister, rang out above the chaos. "You will stay here forever." The shadows surged, and I felt my strength wane, the weight of despair clawing at my mind. It felt as if the very walls were closing in, swallowing my thoughts, drowning me in an inescapable abyss. Just as I turned to confront the grotesque figure looming closer, something icy gripped my neck, a force pulling me down into utter darkness, and in that moment, I realized I was not just another trapped soul. I had become part of their nightmarish history, the chosen one, awakened by the horrors that once slept. As my vision blurred, I caught a glimpse of the diary slipping from my hands, fluttering to the floor as the echoes of laughter surrounded me, promising that I would meet the fate of the au pairs before me. Then everything went dark again, for the shadows were hungry, and tonight, I was their feast. When I regained consciousness, the world around me came not as a gentle haze but as a jarring shock. Darkness dripped from the corners of the room like wet paint, mingling with the oppressive silence that blanketed the nursery. My hands trembled as I pushed myself upright, the chill of the wooden floor biting into my palms. The walls appeared to pulse, as if the very structure of the room was alive, breathing at an insidious rhythm that matched the frantic thrumming of my heart. The laughter lingered in the air like a stench of fetid reminder of the figure that had haunted my every thought, lingering close enough to remind me of its presence, yet far enough to keep me on the precipice of sanity. I turned, seeking any glimmer of hope against the sprawling abyss. The door remained shut, sealed by an unseen force, and I felt the weight of the shadows pressing in, their intentions obscured but palpably hungry. The nursery had transformed since my fall into unconsciousness. The toys around me seemed to shift ever so slightly, the eyes of the dolls watching with malicious glee. I could swear I saw one of them twitch a porcelain clown, its painted grin widening as if inviting me to join its festivity of despair. Join the others, it seemed to whisper, the sound of its voice a thread laced with dread that sent shivers racing down my spine. Panic ignited a fire within me. I needed to escape, I couldn't stay. Forcing myself up, I turned toward the window instead, praying against logic that perhaps the outside world could offer salvation. Moonlight streamed through, illuminating a landscape of decay stretching beyond the glass. The beauty was deceptive, the vibrant night filled with grotesque shadows, twisting trees that swayed as if drowning in torment. In the distance, the shape of the house loomed on ever watchful eye, piercing into the recesses of my soul. As I reached for the window, a cacophony erupted behind me, a shattering of glass, a chorus of suffocating laughter erupting from something deep within the corners of the room. I whirled around. Where once stood the shadowy silhouette of the twisted figure, now hovered a mass of darkness, growing and curling into various shapes, indistinguishable faces echoing my name in hoarse whispers, a chilling reminder of its pursuits. Help, no. I gasped, the words clawing up my throat as I backed away, searching for a weapon among the debris that littered the floor. The journal lay open, pages fluttering wildly, and as I reached down, I felt the chill rise from it, the air heavy with desperation. I skimmed through the entries, seeking the truth of this wretched place. They had left warnings, notes about the entity, and one stood out, a warning scrawled beneath the scribbled phrase, "She feeds on fear." It is a contract, a bond that can never be severed once established. Suddenly, the wind howled through the cracks in the walls, the shadows thickened, swirling around me like a tempest, clawing at my sanity and grasping for more than just my fear. They wanted ownership, wanted to bind me to this nightmare, to make me pay tribute with my very essence. No. I screamed, lurching towards the door, as the weight of the shadows forced me closer to the creeping darkness. The creaking laughter stopped, replaced by silence so profound I could hear the pounding of my own heart. Then, a low, taunting voice scraped through the stillness. You think you can leave? They are all around you, waiting without thought. I lunged for the door, ramming my weight against it, the wood groaning as it resisted, but something pushed back, a palpable presence that felt like skeletal hands gripping the lock. I stumbled backward, the breath hitching in my throat as the room whirled around me, the shadows closing in tighter, their whispers becoming deafening, drowning out reason. I needed a plan. I remembered the symbols etched upon the walls from my earlier inspection. Perhaps there was a way to break this curse. I spun on my heels, refusing to be merely another chapter in their history, another ghost tied to this wretched nursery. Grasping the journal, I ripped out a page, tearing it free in a desperate attempt to free myself from the sinister binding, but as I opened my mouth to chant the words, the darkness crackled, and a loud shriek pierced my ears, a resonating cry of desperation that felt distinctly human. They were not alone, the souls enclosed within these walls were desperate, twisted in anguish, echoing my fear back at me. The shadows surged, a wave of agony crashing over me, pulling as if I were entrapped in a whirlpool. With a surge of adrenaline, I pushed forward, chanting louder, desperate to claw back the meager thread of control. What I conjured was not just a safe passage but something more, a connection to the past, to those that had suffered before me. Visions of their faces erupted in my mind, a haunting gallery of anguish and dread that begged for release. Suddenly, a piercing scream erupted not from the shadows, but from the floor itself. The ground trembled, cracking as if it needed to expel its darkest secrets. I stumbled back, eyes wide, as the very fabric of the nursery began to quiver. And in that moment of turmoil, beneath the relentless cacophony, a whisper emerged, "Only one will remain." As the walls shuddered and the shadows writhed, converging tighter around me, I was thrust into chaos, a diversion of light and dark battling for my soul. Then, a hand reached out from the depths of the nursery's darkness, clawing its way toward me, and I realized with gut-wrenching fear that I was no longer alone. It wasn't just her they had returned, and they wanted what was theirs, and as the last remnants of my courage sloughed away, the nursery shuddered, ready to claim its next victim. The shadows roared to life around me, their forms twisting and blurring into grotesque figures, gaping mouths emitting cries of sorrow and rage that echoed through the suffocating darkness. I pressed myself against the nursery wall, feeling its wooden surface yield under the crushing weight of despair. The air was thick with a visceral fear that seeped into my skin, clawing at my every rational thought. The hand that emerged from the darkness wasn't Alanite, was joined by others, a writhing mass of visages both familiar and foreign, each face twisted in eternal anguish, their eyes hollow and begging. Their fingers unfurled toward me, as if I were the last hope in a world consumed by shadows. "Please," they mouthed silently, their voices swallowed by the roar of the tempest surrounding me. Desperation clawed at my throat. They bore striking similarities to the pictures I had seen in the journal, the children who had wandered into this place before me. It was a nightmare reflecting back at me with every agonized expression etching itself in my memory. "Help us!" they cried, their voices finally breaking the surface of the encroaching darkness. I trembled, knowing their fate could be mine. Their pleas echoed in my head, drowning out my fears with guilt and newfound determination. I couldn't abandon them. I wouldn't. Spurred into action, I snatched the journal from my grip, turning to its pages amidst the chaos, searching for another incantation, something to bind the shadows, to break the pact. The words blurred as I flicked through the tattered leaves, each whisper growing louder, each shadow more restless. "Only one will remain," the nursery taunted, but I refused to submit. Then I saw a single passage glowing ominously under the dim light from the cracked window. A spell of binding, one that could perhaps trap the entity within the walls and grant the souls, the tortured children, their freedom. My heart raced, each beat syncing with the panicked flutter of the pages against my trembling fingers, but as I began to gather my breath to recite the incantation, I heard a voice deep, mockingly gentle and silky smooth. It curled around my senses. "Why would you free them, little one? You think they deserve redemption? They chose this chaos just as you will." It flowed through the shadows like an unseen serpent, closer, wrapping around me, luring me into doubt. The very world around me seemed to pulse with its malevolence, and suddenly I was besieged by visions. Twisted scenes of the nursery's dark history danced before my eyes. Each child, once full of laughter, became a puppet of despair, their souls tethered to the laughter that now resonated through the agonizing silence. A ceremony gone wrong, parents warned away but drawn back nonetheless. I could see them, their faces crumpled in regret, only to become hollow ghosts, forever trapped in a cycle of torment. No. I shrieked, fighting back the tide of visions, clutching at my own sanity as tendrils of fear snaked around my heart. The shadows hesitated, a moment of hesitation that felt both like a cruel trick and a fleeting opportunity. The figures of the children flickered into sharp relief, their faces full of emotion, a reflection of my fear feeding into my resolve. "Do it. Break them free," they urged in a chorus, desperation accentuating their cries. It was their hunger fueling the shadows. They fed the entity the very essence of their dreams. In that moment of clarity, I understood that the nursery was alive, reacting to my thoughts, drawing power from every ounce of terror radiating from me. I needed to harness that power, transform it into something potent, a beacon of light amidst the encroaching dark. This would not be just a ritual, it would be a battle for the very essence of my soul. As I gathered my courage, the atmosphere shifted, the shadows shrieking in protest. I opened my mouth, pouring every ounce of defiance into my voice as I began the incantation. With each syllable, the walls trembled, both resisting and responding to my will. The figures surged forward, drawing closer, their eyes filled with a glint of hope, a plea for deliverance. But with each word that left my lips, the tide of darkness surged back with a vengeance, relentless and overwhelming. The air thickened, pushing against my chest as if trying to suffocate my resolve. The shadows lunged, a clawing mass intent on dragging me into the depths of despair. Suddenly, the nursery exploded into chaos. The walls pulsated rhythmically as if alive, fragments of the room splintering and swirling in a maelstrom of darkness. As I pressed on, screaming the incantation louder, the shadows began to recoil, but I could feel the entity's rage rising to meet my defiance. Then, from the maelstrom, a blinding light erupted, forcing its way through the oppressive darkness. For a brief moment, I felt hope surge within me, but just as quickly, that light was extinguished as a guttural scream erupted, mournful and horrific. The nursery shook violently, and in a final act of desperation, the shadows converged into a singular shape, hulking and monstrous, a silhouette that towered over me, its eyes glowing with an unsettling hunger. "You are not meant to leave," it hissed, its voice resonating deep within my bones. "You belong to me now." Just as the last syllable escaped its sinister lips, everything faded to darkness, leaving only my echoing heartbeat, slowly fading into silence. As the world around me blurred, I felt a crushing weight and inevitability that this would be my end, ensnared forever within the nursery's lament. Then a heartbeat, not my own, pulsed against the silence, and I realized with bone-deep terror that I was not alone. Something else was awakening in the shadows. The heartbeat reverberated through the smothering darkness, a steady, primal thrum that sent icy tendrils of fear racing up my spine. I strained to hear past the silent screams echoing in my mind, my heart pounding in sync with that foreign rhythm. It was fast, frantic, as if something had broken free, something that had lain dormant amid the sorrow of the nursery for too long. Almost instinctively, I turned to the cracked wall beside me. Shadows undulated, swirling in a grotesque dance around the edges of my vision. I felt their hunger, their longing, but this pulse was different, unfathomably alive. I was not surrounded by the tormented souls of the children, I was being watched by something far older, far worse. As the darkness thickened, I felt the air grow heavy and electric as shadows writhed and contorted. Silent whispers mingled with the heartbeat, and with each fleeting flicker of despair, I caught glimpses of the creature's supplication and unspeakable horror that yearned for possession, for life, perhaps even for revenge. A nearby doll, hidden amongst the ruins of the nursery, rolled toward me, its eyes a haunting void. "You must let go," it whispered in a child's voice, devoid of joy. "They're hungry for your fears." The moment the message sunk in, a sharp alarm rang through my mind. I hesitated, but for how long? The heartbeat thudded louder, only to abruptly halt, dropping the oppressive silence into an abyss. It echoed against the walls, imploring me to surrender. I felt an unbearable weight press upon me as if the shadows coiled tighter, seeking to engulf my spirit entirely. A flicker of outrage sparked within me, a defiance against my voiding circumstances. I could not give in, not now, not after coming so far. Desperation ignited my voice, and I shouted into the shadows. "What do you want from me?" The agonizing silence swallowed my question, waiting. The tremors of reality returned. An old, murky voice rolled through the cold air like a forgotten tale now resurrected. "To finish the story," it rasped. In that chilling moment, the very foundations of the nursery woke with an enkindled rage. Windows shattered, pouring in shards of reflection that twisted my own features into grotesque copies, grotesque sorrow etched in every visage. I squinted against the angular glints of the glass, as shadows played in the periphery, whispering, begging for release. But I had become the catalyst, a side player in a narrative that spiraled far beyond my grasp. The maelstrom of chaos swirled, and I fled instinctively toward the diary, desperate for answers, every line printed onto my mind like a seal against darkness. The passage surrounding freedom began to hum, a phosphorescent glow emerging from the pages as I thrust it close to me. "Do you believe in sacrifice?" The voice slithered across the nursery, snaking through the air like smoke. "To send one adrift to save many? A promise must be made." The walls trembled in agreement, trembling like the judgment echoed by the forsaken children surrounding me, their faces blurring into one another in a grotesque tapestry of torment. Then it dawned upon my images flickered across my mind, smiling faces, laughter, and vibrant joy drowned beneath the weight of despair. Each moment frozen in time as if they were discounted memories tangled in folly. They hadn't left, they wouldn't leave until someone stepped into the void for them. No. I gasped, stepping back as the realization hit me like a thunderclap. I want. My voice faltered in determination, barely rising above the grasping shadows that roared back in protest, battling against my resolve, pulling at the corners of my heart. A fight for survival I now knew was far from over, but as I twisted to once again read that liberating passage aloud, my blood turned to ice. An indiscernible figure, graceful yet terrifying, began to emerge from the shadows, its shape first monstrous, then shifting back to an almost familiar silhouette. "Remember?" it crooned, echoing like wind through trees. "You're one of us now. It's time to embrace the night." Frozen in horror, I met its eyes, dark pits swirling like a fathomless abyss, and I could hear it then, a cacophony of lost souls cheering. My senses descended into chaos, spiraling toward that beckoning darkness, as the walls of reality warped, imploring me to take the final step into eternal despair. And as those shadowy tendrils reached for me, their fingers brushing against my skin, I realized with gut-wrenching terror that the connection was undeniable. The boundary between us was crumbling, and whether I intended to or not, I was tethered to them. Still, there was but one choice to make, and it screamed through my mind as the room began to spin: one of us would remain. But this time, that choice was one I could not bear to confront. "Why choose?" the dark entity whispered, as reality seemed to split open beneath me. "Let's draw more into our tale." With that, I felt the ground fall away, the maw of darkness opening, a child's laughter resounding as I was forcefully drawn below, grappling desperately against the intensity of the shadowed abyss. And as I slipped into the void, a haunting realization enveloped me: the nursery would never let go. Not until it claimed every whisper of fear it desired, starting with me. The laughter echoed endlessly, filling the chasms of my mind with vibrancy, while the shadows writhed around me like agitated serpents, waiting for night to consume day. I could feel the pull of the nursery, a relentless, otherworldly tugging, promising knowledge, power, and horror beyond comprehension. It was as though the very air was saturated with an intoxicating melody of voices, coaxing me deeper into the heart of that ancient malice. Flashes of visions erupted with each beat of my heart, the walls of the nursery morphing into primal faces, their eyes gleaming with ravenous hunger, their mouths whispering the promises of forgotten memories and lost children. I squinted valiantly against their brilliance, but the shadows surged forth, wrapping around me, each fragment entrapping another piece of my will. "We care for you," they cooed, their voices slipping through the very fabric of reality. Suddenly, a sharp, biting cold seized my arm, a phantom grip connecting me to a place of haunting memories where laughter once echoed vibrant, now twisted into a chorus of keen and torment. I was thrust into a vision of the nursery alive, bustling with its ghostly residents, joyful specters playing in the filth. Their smile-woven imagery pulsed against the walls, vibrating with the rhythm of that relentless heartbeat, promising safety, but cautioning against the consequence of forgetting. "Did you forget?" The voice coiled around my consciousness, reminding me of the faces of those I had tried to leave behind, the joyful children trapped in the nursery's unyielding grasp, their eyes reflecting a longing that twisted my gut in knots. But my fear, spiraling inwards, sought an answer to this soul-crushing question. Were they truly innocent, or were they participants in a darker ritual that demanded a continuous offering? As the ground beneath me shifted, I gasped, the air turning thick and tangible, pulsating with malice and urgency. The moment I felt the chilling touch of icy fingers on my spine, the spectral youth encircled me in a pulsating crowd, vibrant but fading, as life slipped free. A charm of desire hung on their lips, the mischief dimming in the realization that not all could be saved. Better yet, not all deserved saving. "Come play with us forever," a child's voice pleaded, sweet and haunting. The figure grasped my hand, urging me to dance, to forget, as shadows ensnared my feet, anchoring me to that place of vivid despair. I struggled against them, fighting to grapple the truth that twisted beneath glittering eyes, a truth that sought to bind me to their fate. "Each choice has a price," whispered the specters, their voices more insistent now, drowning me in their desire, each plea a pulse against my heart. "You can save them or join them. Do you possess the strength to choose?" I closed my eyes, wishing to retreat into darkness, longing to wake from the suffocating nightmare chaining me to this horrific tableau. But there was no escape, only the embrace of the nursery as the ground shook again beneath me, carving lines through the very essence of my being. And then, they changed, their laughter turned sinister, dark curls of smoke trailing from their chests, eyes hollowing as they unleashed a terrible truth: they will always haunt you until the void is filled. Their fear will guide you into the embrace of the nursery, and you will witness everything. It hounded like a grave stone clattering against a crypt. With each whisper, their grasp tightened, pulling me toward the infinite blackness that encapsulated the nursery, toward the lighted walls that twisted with agony, revealing not just faces, but the harrowing stories hidden beneath youthful laughter and memories long abandoned. My heart raced, pounded almost violently, as the shadows amplified their resonance, mirroring my escalating dread. Just as I felt the air squeeze tight around me, growing thick with an unbearable weight, a light burst forth from the pages of the diary, blinding, illuminating the anguished faces of the children, and another truth, one watched in the darkness. Their hollowed expressions glared at me with desperation and need, marked by haunting echoes of their lost moments. The fear echoed louder than the songs sung of bygone happiness. And that last flicker of brilliance, a visage emerged, poised just beyond reach, familiar and yet utterly alien, swirling with the grotesque monument of desires unfulfilled. My breath caught, the shadows rippling in response. "Remember me?" it crooned through twisted lips, a grim tone peering back through the veil of familiarity, plunging deeper into the fabric woven of eternal horror. The darkness surged forth with renewed vigor, its myriad of voices crescendoing, merging into a wailing chorus as I prepared to scream, a defiance rising within me, an ember of defiance against this overwhelming dread. But the nursery would not allow it, and as the entity lunged, twisting through shadows to claim me, I was left teetering on the brink of horror, the remnants of choices stripped away like blood-slicked threads. The final flicker of brightness shattered, sending me spiraling into an abyss infinitely darker, unfamiliar terrors lingering in its depths, waiting for me to embrace them, and then silence. A chilling realization settled upon me as I felt the weight of those intense gazes bearing down, draining the light at the edges of my existence. Whatever choice I made now would carry consequences far beyond my understanding. "Join us," they whispered, infusing the dark with a bone-chilling hunger. But as their haunting harmonies wrapped around me, I could barely conceive the echo of a final thought. What if the time had come to choose? And more terrifyingly, what if choosing meant sealing my fate in the most dreadful manner imaginable? The last echo reverberated, a soft thud resounding with finality, a promise and a curse intertwined as the darkness swallowed me whole. The shadows writhed like serpents in the corners of my perception, an elegance to their menace that sang an unsettling lullaby. I was submerged in a thick, billowing haze that clung to my skin, suffocating the remnants of my will. Each breath I took felt like inhaling the essence of grief, the echoes of lost moments, wails of children trapped in a netherworld. The air shimmered with unspoken fears, each scintillation a reminder of my helplessness against the nursery's sinister embrace. With my heart thrumming in my chest, I felt the grip of the unknown clutch at my soul, drawing me through the infinite expanse of darkness. I staggered forward, propelled not by choice but by a primal yearning to uncover the secrets festering within those spectral walls. The nursery loomed ahead, a grotesque silhouette silhouetted against the moaning void, its entrance a gaping maw that promised both salvation and annihilation. As I approached, I heard a symphony of whispers brushing against my ears, fragments of children's laughter turning to bitter cries, mingling with the rustle of unseen figures slipping through the ether. "Help us," they implored, voices overlapping in a cacophony of despair. My hands trembled, betraying my resolve as the shadows beckoned tantalizingly closer, daring me to tread deeper. "Can you taste the fear?" A soft voice lilted, like an echo carried on a breeze I could not perceive, yet felt keenly against my skin. "Can you remember the joy of being among us?" The question gnawed at the edges of my consciousness, taunting my dwindling grip on reality. I fought back the urge to scream as a flicker of memory pierced the dense fog, the blanket fort I had built as a child, laughter spilling into the air like spilled ink, the innocence that now felt like a cruel joke. Yet now, with every step, the atmosphere shifted, thickening like blood congealed in the veins of the earth. The faded luminescence from the nursery walls flickered, revealing grotesque figures perched within every corner, eyes unblinking, parched and yearning. I stumbled, the voices swelling to a fever pitch as the walls seemed to lean in, eager to consume me. their very structure rumbling with eldritch whispers, "Would you wish to be free?" They hissed softly, echoing in unison the sentiment ingrained in our very souls, the primal urge for liberation, even when shackled by dread. To know the truth behind our peace. Another voice chimed in, high-pitched with an unnatural eagerness, as shadowy hands reached out from behind the walls to caress my skin, promising salvation wrapped in dark mystery, but deep inside, dread clawed at my heart, the shadows rippling with anticipation, sensing my hesitation. Each heartbeat was marked by the silhouettes of the once innocent, now twisted remnants of what they had been, now bound eternally to the nursery's unholy will. Their eyes shimmered with insatiable hunger, as if answering the call of a siren echoing through the void. That I, in a frenzy, I lunged back, the voices rising in chaotic unison. "Do you remember our games? Our love? The waiting? Our brothers and sisters lost? Shall we play together again?" The laughter once again morphed, singing sweet notes of betrayal and sorrow strung together with threads of anguish. I felt it coil around me like a vengeful serpent, full of rage and longing for companionship beyond the grave. Behind me, I heard an exhale, a low, grating sound that felt impossibly familiar. Driven by instinct, I turned slowly. And there it stood, yet it was not simply one of the children, it was something far worse. A twisted amalgamation of them all, their features blending in a grotesque way that made my stomach churn. It smiled with lips stretched wide, misaligned teeth glistening like ivory daggers. It beckoned me, tilting its head in a mocking semblance of innocence. "Come." It warbled, each syllable dripping with malice. "Let us show you. Your choice awaits, so close now. You can join us forever." It extended an arm, a cluster of skeletal hands bursting forth from its like roots, seeking nourishment, seeking hope. The shadows swirled tighter, smearing my vision with dark promise, shrouding my very existence in surreal terror. But as I began to retreat, dread gnawing at my resolve, the voice of despair bolted within me, igniting something primal. It chanted in my mind, recalling faces I had lost, memories washing over me in rapid succession, both dear and irrevocably lost. Was I to relinquish hope now? Would I forfeit surrender for an uncertain consequence that wove through my veins? And then came the sensation, like icy fingers clutching my heart, a realization dashed with utter horror. My feet were rooted to the ground, shadows ensnaring my ankles as laughter enveloped me, muffled yet resonant with anticipation. I could feel them pressing against me, every whisper coiling tighter around my consciousness. "Choose," they urged, "choose or be chosen." As the disembodied light flickered overhead, the air crackled with unsettling energy, my limbs growing heavy with despair, each moment stretching into an eternity of claustrophobic choice. But just then, with an involuntary gasp, I felt something Maureen echo of another presence teeming now within the periphery, lurking just beyond the veil of darkness, waiting. And as I strained to look, the chilling realization washed over me, I was not alone in the nursery. The walls began to bleed a black ooze, pooling at my feet, churning with a life of its own. From that abyss, a new figure began to materialize, one whose silence blanketed the chaos. With each blink, its form solidified. My heart raced. The last thing I saw before the darkness closed in was the familiar gleam of eyes that seemed to recognize me. Eyes that whispered secrets I should never have known, and just as the icy hand of fate tightened its grip, I felt the ground tremble beneath me. What emerged was unfathomably an entity cocooned in semblances of the innocent, leading to a revelation that would shatter all I once believed about choice. I could do nothing but scream, and as heaven quaked in response, echoing the lament of those bound to the nursery, a haunting realization settled: the true choice had always been made for me. The cries of anguish rose, swirling in a tempest that clawed at the edges of my sanity. I stood paralyzed, heart racing, as the darkness seemed to echo my own horror. The entity, grotesque and alluring, peered into my soul with eyes that flickered memories long buried, dredging up visions of joy twisted into despair. Its slight frame whispered of children lost, congregating around a center of baleful energy that branded the shadows themselves. The thick, ooze-like liquid coursed around my feet, fetid and cold as it began to rise, licking greedily at my skin. Panic surged through me. It was not simply a binding, this was a binding to something far older and more sinister than the nursery itself. The memory of innocence wasted clawed at my throat, threatening to erupt into screams as I grappled with the implications of being dragged down into this mire of anguish. No. I gasped, each syllable choked by despair. I refuse, but denial did little to stave off the unseen arms slipping around my waist, pulling me deeper into the sordid embrace of the nursery. They were not just shadows, they were the lost souls of the children I felt in every fiber of my being. Their laughter had morphed into a relentless rhythm, pressing in closer, each giggle sharpening into a jagged edge, slicing against my tenuous grip on reality. "Don't you want to be with us?" The horror before me cooed, its head tilting unnaturally, all semblance of innocence warped into a monstrous mockery. "We have so much to share." I whipped my head around, desperate for an escape while knowing all routes led back to the nursery's maw. The walls pulsed, writhing with the embodiment of memories I could not mine. I could sense them, just beneath the surface, faces and voices, a cacophony of experiences begging to be unearthed, to resurface like the rotted roots of fallen trees. "Reconnect with your past." The voice urged, louder now, vibrating with an insistent pull that threatened to unravel me. The ground trembled underfoot, and with every shudder, I could feel the eyes of those wronged children upon me, an audience to my suffering. Just beyond the luminous haze, an indistinct figure drew nearer, its shape flickering like the dying embers of a once vibrant flame. A child? I blinked, desperate to glean clarity from the chaos that surrounded me. As the figure stepped into the dim light, I staggered back, sickness pooling in my stomach. It was a little girl, appearing vaguely familiar yet horrifyingly wrong. Her once cherubic face was marred by an unholy grin, eyes wide with a gleeful dread that sent cold shivers crawling up my spine. "You're here now," she sang, voice in eerie harmony with the malevolent laughter echoing around us. "You can play forever." The horror of it locked me in place. I felt the shadows thicken around my ankles, pulling me, fighting against the last remnants of my will. The girl extended her hand, bound in shadow and light, a portal to happiness twisted into a web of nightmares. "Join us," she insisted, the melody sweet, but laced with a savage undertone. "Don't you remember? We can play house, and hide and seek, and all the games we never got to finish." Tears stung my eyes, memories flooding back, summer days spent playing tag, echoes of laughter that faded like autumn leaves. "No!" I yelled, shaking my head fiercely, but the memory of sunshine was rapidly consumed by a growing darkness. The laughter intensified, a chorus of whispers promising me a chance to relive every forgotten childhood moment, to reconnect with every fleeting joy. But the weight of evil settled around my heart, constricting, squeezing. "Play or be played with," the voice insisted, echoing in my mind like a relentless tempo. Shadows coalesced around the little girl, revealing the forms of others, twisted remnants of playmates I had lost. Their eyes bore into mine, wide and glistening with unnatural life, each pair pleading, accusing, haunting. As the ooze began to crawl up my legs, slick and biting, I clenched my fists, fighting against the retching pull of the nursery. I felt the boyish laughter of my once playful self drown beneath the terror consuming me. Then I recognized the me friends' faces beckoning, urging me toward the abyss. "Help us finish the games, please," they cried in unison, pushing through the shadows to reach me, fingers stained with darkness. My mind raced. Was there any flicker of hope, or was I to be drawn into this confounding nightmare? Could I defy this malevolence long enough to escape? And suddenly, the shadows before me splintered, revealing glimpses of the outside world, fragments of sunlight, air untainted by grief. The nursery's hold began to tremble as other voices emerged, louder this time, mixing in sorrowful symphony. "Don't leave us. You can't," they begged, panicking now, a bonded fate unraveling. At that moment, I glanced back at the little girl, expecting to see a hint of fear or sorrow, but there was only a wild hunger within her gaze. She took a single step closer, eyes gleaming with a voiceless promise, her sweetness now sharpened into a blade. The air throbbed. "Choose." She screeched, and as the walls began to bend and sway, darkness erupted in spirals around me, energy crackling like wild paintbrush strokes on a stark canvas. I felt the very fabric of the nursery tearing apart, a chasm opening, the two forces colliding, clawing for dominion. Something shifted behind me, and I turned to see the back wall splintering open. A tall shadow loomed there, shrouded in twisted memories, eyes blank and unyielding. I caught a glimpse of the very essence of the nursery, a fatherly figure, demonic yet familiar, with hands outstretched toward me, ready to claim my very essence. No. I screamed, but it was drowned in the tumult. The choice was made, yet I had no idea what path awaited me. The room exploded in kinetic chaos, my scream echoing in desperate denial as I felt the ground give way beneath my feet, the rush of air swallowing me whole as I plummeted into the depths of my unresolved past, essence splintering in ways I could never have prepared for. That I could not tell who would thrive on my fear, the children, the nursery, or something even darker yet unimagined. It was not merely a choice of this world anymore, it spiraled into an unfathomable infinity, delighting in my demise. With one final gasp, just before the darkness enveloped me, I felt a hand grasp my should a presence in the void, cold and oppressive but real. Not yet, it murmured against the chaos. There is more to discover. And in that instant, I froze, heart pounding in my ears, for I knew the terrible truth: something far worse than what lay in shadow had come to claim me. It's been weeks since the madness first gripped me, each day blurring with the next in a haze of torment. I can hear them again, the shadows, their whispers crawling into my mind, filling the empty spaces where hope once resided. I've become a ghost in my own life. Shadows cling to my edges, taunting me with memories of laughter twisted into screams. I can see their faces, the children who beckoned me closer, their once innocent eyes now marred by despair. They are hungry. They want what I have left. That I sit at the edge of the cellar once more, the old wooden door creeping open yet again, as if the nursery itself summons me back to its morbid embrace. The air is thicker now, pulsing with remembrance, like a heartbeat thrumming beneath the floorboards. Something stirs within, and I know the abyss is calling, poised on the brink of my fragile sanity. I clutch the diary close to my chest, its pages worn and stained, a grimoire of all the lost but never forgotten. This time, I won't be foolish. Armed with knowledge, I've crafted an incantation to banish the darkness, to break the binding that has kept me shackled to this hell. As I chant the words, the shadows whisper back, their chilling laughter reverberating around the room, mocking my courage. They are not afraid of my defiance. They beckon closer, filling the air with a scent of decay, weaving through my thoughts like a spider weaving its web. You think you can escape? They hiss, their voices become only serpent coiling around my mind. We are this place, and you are more ours than ever before. The walls seem to stretch and breathe, pulsing with malevolence, and I feel the life leaching from me, my resolve waning, a flicker in the gathering darkness, but there's a part of me that still fights, still tries to claw back against despair. The memories swirl, fragments of laughter, whispers of promises made. The children's faces blend with those of my own past, each vying for recognition. They do not want me to leave. They want me to stay, to join their ranks as the nursery claims yet another soul. That I press on, determined to finish what was started. You cannot break me, I roar, standing defiantly against the mass of shadows that close in around me, surging like a tide that seeks to drag me under. I recite the words louder, melding sound with purpose, invoking the souls trapped here to bolster my courage. Tension escalates, an unseen force swirling against me, but I push against the wave, my spirit igniting with the power of those who came before. Suddenly, everything goes quiet. The shadows retreat, swirling backward with a furious wind sweep, revealing a gate, warped but intact, where the nursery meets the unknown. I hesitate, understanding that the darkness at my heels might not simply vanish. I could be opening a portal to something infinitely worse, a cycle of horror, forever binding me to this place. Then my breath catches. I catch sight of a familiar form, a child, the little girl from my past, standing beside the open threshold, her eyes glimmering with ethereal light. You've come back, she whispers, a knowing smile dancing on her lips. Will you play? A cold chill prickles up my spine, and my heart sinks as I feel the pull, an undeniable connection binding us more profoundly than before. My words fail me as the shadows gather behind the girl, the chorus of laughter swelling with anticipation. That I wanted freedom, an escape, but faced with this incarnation of innocence twisted into the grotesque, I realize the utter truth: the nursery will never let me go. I am one with the shadows now, tied by unseen threads to the very fabric of this malevolence. And as that macabre realization washes over Muhen, I thought I could escape. I feel my essence being drawn toward the stars twinkling just beyond the threshold. Each step forward feels like betrayal, breaking my bond with the world outside, and as her voice clinks softly into the air like silver bells, I gasp. Join us. We have so much fun waiting for you. The door didn't open into freedom, it opened into an eternity of shared anguish. As I stepped forward, drawn into the nursery's grasp, knowing with a bone-deep terror that I never truly left but became like them. Forever. And chillingly, as I turn back to face the abyss, I hear the laughter, the echoes of lost souls joining my own in a haunting cacophony, resonating into the stillness. Now you are one of us, and we will play always.